All right, so today we are going to be ranking luxury brands by their social media. It's going to be completely arbitrary based on things that I like and think are good as an expert in the luxury social media and creative direction space. Basically, I could do what I want because it is my YouTube channel. But this is a super interesting topic to talk about and one that I talk about a lot because I am the creative in residence at Vaan Group and we make luxury websites and online presences for people like Tiffany's, Jacob & Co., Rode, etc. And within that role, I do things like put together our luxury online report, which is a trend report about what luxury brands are doing on the internet that was cited in Business of Fashion, kind of acclaimed around, that we put out earlier this year. We'll link that down here in the profile. And I also work on a ton of brands from a luxury standpoint. So I've sold kind of artisan, high-end things in outdoors and sporting goods for a long, long time, and then now consult with whether it's major retail chains, major brands on their actual social strategy and product strategy. All right, to kick off, we are going to talk about luxury experiences and luxury hotels in particular. I'm going to zone in on the Ritz and the Ritz-Carlton and talk about some that don't do it as well. You know we weren't going to get into fashion right from the start. Have to get a little more interesting. So luxury experiences are really interesting. How do you convey a place within content? And how, as a historic brand, do you kind of stand out? So we'll start with the Four Seasons, who do basically what most hotels do. They have some really nice reels showing the most beautiful locations that they have in this very highly produced format that honestly don't do very well. Like 50, 60,000 views. One incredible one might get 560 or like a million. But there is no storytelling here. It is just purely like travel content. It has not adapted to what's actually happening in the world. They slightly better will do, some stuff where they're like, obviously they're bringing like a celebrity chef, like that kind of thing. But again, even this isn't good content. It is aesthetically beautiful content that doesn't inherently have any purpose, which is why it doesn't work. Now I'm gonna put this down here for the Four Seasons in the bottom quadrant of how I think these brands are ranked. I do not think this is good. And you come over to here onto TikTok, they're at least trying some different content formats and getting a little more experimental, stitching some influencers, etc. But it is a pretty limited selection of content at best, where it tells you that they're basically not trying or taking this seriously as a magnet. And let's contrast this a bit with some other channels. So now here we have the Ritz-Carlton. So they were, for a long time, doing typical content very similar to the Four Seasons. They would have, sometimes they'd have like a vignette or meet the faces of their people, but mostly it was just the same beautiful, typical Instagram content. But then recently with their new merch collab, they did some things that were a little bit different. So they collab with this brand Late Checkout to do a merchandise collection. And Late Checkout is very like quasi rowing blazers, Percival. I think it's a win for them to be able to get a collab with someone like Ritz-Carlton. Ritz-Carlton sees a affluent millennial demographic that kind of fits into their general brand perception and says, cool, we can lean into this quasi Wes Anderson, quasi Ivy League aesthetic and put something together. And they launched a campaign well on social media for a brand of this size. So they have a famous actor anchoring this. He posts as a collab with the brand and the Ritz-Carlton, and he does this twice. You'll notice some of his only posts, but major views on each of these. 2.2 and 1.7 million, which is the power of having an anchor influencer in these campaigns, which is why if you do have luxury brands and larger brands, using those people effectively in something like this and making sure they're contracted to post, but then being able to see the ripple effects of that, like he kicks off a series for them, is impactful. So in this collaboration, they have basically a mini movie that's on YouTube about a late checkout scenario with a number of actors featuring the brand and the merchandise throughout it. That you see has those collab posts, but then also has its time just separate purely on the Ritz-Carlton account. And they're able to kind of tell their story. They're doing it in this kind of idea of TV show as social media you've seen me talk about. And they're also employing carousels and things, also showing off the merchandise, but with the through storyline. This is inherently way more interesting than anything else that the Ritz-Carlton has done and takes them in that interesting direction. And some of these, like this post isn't doing that great. And I think what you see here is all the right concepts, but they're still figuring out execution. There are a couple of brands that have done the TV show right, like as far as social TV show in luxury. So Alexis Bittar is the one that comes to mind, where they spent a lot of time over time. Instead of like a short film broken into 5 chunks, they've done episodic series with these characters that they have, where each part is an episode. They've done probably 100 or plus of these episodes at once. They've established fictional characters in the format, and they've brought in real life people. Like this is La Roche is in here as the guest of this, in luxury, crossing over into this series that they've built. And I feel like that's where something like the Ritz could go with this and be doing better with the posts if each single one was telling like a real narrative story versus just a few excerpts. But it's, for what they're doing, is excellent and headed completely in the right direction. And again, inherently more interesting than what we saw at the Four Seasons. So I'm gonna put this up here and closer to the B+ category, headed to the right place. Let's pop over to the Ritz on TikTok. who are, again, doing way more of an approach and a try for this than we're seeing from the Four Seasons. They're doing the same stuff, showing off the beautiful things, but they're also doing some more shareable formats, right? Like this carousel of places to make memories. Not saying it's amazing, but they're trying some things. They have a little bit of a theme inside what they're doing for their locations versus having it just be footage, which I like. But then they are presenting some of their luxury experiences as art, which I love. So the art of mixology in Tokyo, where they're basically saying, here's what a luxury experience looks like when you go to this hotel. Here's how we make you a cocktail. Presented and shown really well in classic kind of Tik Tok format. And they've done this in a couple ways. Obviously, they did the shoot in Tokyo. They showcased Tokyo a couple times. But basically, every little thing that you would see in the hotel, they're presenting in this very well done experience that people want to watch. People love content like this. Ties to the brand, is extremely luxury, and makes you want to go visit and experience it. And so those vignettes, I think, are some of the most compelling pieces of content that they have for the brand, and they should really lean into this, the art of, because they have every location in their portfolio to work with different artists and things happening. So they're showing that in everything from afternoon tea, etc. So people ask, how do you do luxury content on social media? If you are an experience, like showing the experience and showing it in context and taking care into the craft of it is a winning formula, especially if people can lose themselves in it for a few moments. So speaking of that, and again, I'll put this Ritz-Carlton overall in this kind of B+ on social category. We have the Ritz London. This is an example of what I would give an A. So single location, Ritz-Carlton and Ritz are different ownership. And they are doing an excellent job showcasing with a couple different formats. So I think they do an illustration every month or every week or something like that. And they document it. It's just some fun little content. The interplay of art and luxury is something we'll talk about a lot in this video. But then they are creating characters of the people that work at the hotel. So as opposed to like the television series Ritz, where they're bringing in actors and things to do it, they have a lot of characters there. So this is their tea master, Jiando. He talks about the tea. You can tell he's passionate about it. He cares about it. He really knows about it. He's worked there for a long time. It's presented in the luxury setting of the Ritz itself. And they have an awesome set of videos where you can learn about tea and you can really learn about the ethos of the people that are there. I think is an excellent content series. And they're doing the same things in several ways. So this is the actual manager of the Ritz telling the story about how the crepe Suzette came about while he actually cooks them tableside. And so you get the combination of a story being told, this immaculate setting, the actual recipe of how this is made, and just like a luxury showcase all in all, personality based, I think is really top tier luxury experience content. And the other thing that they're doing is what I'll call almost like parasite luxury is the wrong term, but basically they're saying if you're in your feed and you see these posts, you get pulled into the world of the Ritz for a brief moment, of someone serving you cheese, of getting served a morning breakfast. They're basically putting these little moments that you would experience in the hotel, like into your feed from a first-person perspective, very casually, in a way that makes you get lost in them momentarily and want to enjoy them. And I think this is a big part of why people have continued to follow their account. They've gotten a lot more than some of these other luxury chains, is you begin to feel that personality between the people. You're able to lose yourself in a little moment there. And they have these formats that really embody luxury and personality in the best way. So for an experience standpoint, I will be giving the Ritz an A. All right, now we're going to dive over into the world of luxury fashion. We're going to kick off talking about Burberry. Their TikTok in particular got quite the notoriety and put out some very interesting content. They took a luxury as art approach to content by saying, hey, we're going to use some of the brand iconography. We're going to use some of the things that are happening with our products to create truly interesting, more artistic expressions that we put online. That has done very well for them in terms of getting attention. We're looking at these videos of 14 million views, 3 million views, etc. They're again purely presented from an artistic perspective, done by a team that obviously cares a lot about making incredible content and who's done just an amazing job. But what gets complicated about something like this is where that goes over time based on where the brand is over time. So if you want to represent, get brand awareness for Burberry in general, to associate Burberry with a culture of art as luxury, then they're doing a great job. I think I've gotten a lot of awareness on the brand. They've also gone through a pretty major rebrand. And if you've seen some of my other content, I'm a big fan of the actual look and feel of this new logo, of the general idea of it, but am not a fan of kind of what the execution of product has looked like with this over time. And so that's where this gets interesting, right? Where this is a video that deserves its 10.2 million views that we have on here. But it's not leading to an experience that gives the consumer the ability to buy, as represented in kind of Burberry's sales for a few reasons. And so if we go back through this, again, 10 million views, this bag does not have the potential to be an it bag. It does not have that popularity level. It does not, for all intents and purposes, look great. Sorry to go full fashion critic here, but that's where we are. They are presenting all of this artistic work for things that are at best okay. And this is something that has much more potential than the previous bag. But what happens when you have a bit of a product crisis, which is what I feel like they're in now, where you have these items that get some views, but like, are people shelling out $2K for this like particular Burberry tracksuit in that look? Like, no, they're not. And if they are, it has to be made into a cultural item. And it has to, so there's this combination of finding the actual product resonance they need to do. And then even no matter what, if they do have products that are out there, really showing why they belong into a luxury wardrobe and a luxury stable. So this content, again, all incredible. Social media team doing an absolutely excellent job of securing views and positive association with the brand. But you'll notice that they stopped recently. Now they're moving into this kind of content, which they've got some vignettes in here. It's a little more real. It's a little more focused on some of their celebrity partners. Feels a little more Instagram, but it doesn't really have any weight to it. Like obviously it's not built to perform and get a bunch of views. They're showing the clothing in a light where it's almost hard to understand and appreciate it. That one's actually pretty decent, but these ones, for instance, I do not think are. And you'll see, they're getting these views on these videos, but they're doing things even on Instagram. Like this is not a format that is going to do well for you, like on Instagram. It's a cheating format, right? Where you're saying, hey, cool, I'm gonna put it up for a couple seconds and try to get a bunch of repeat views. When in reality, like you need to be doing better to showcase it. So I feel like what brands like this who are in a complicated point are missing is that you can't just flash the product anymore. They've made good enough content over enough time that the brand resonance is there, but the product resonance isn't. And the answer to that isn't flashing the product on screen a few times with the logo. And the answer isn't even necessarily showing it like on the runway. The answer is, how do I actually wear and incorporate this into my life? How does this become part of my wardrobe? Stop presenting the objects as art. Start telling the story of how you style it, how you incorporate it, and seeing people that actually resonate and not purely celebrities helping do that. So right now, I would give the brand approach they started with, and they really built them up on social, I would give an A. Excellent work across the board. Where we are ending up at now and how social works in context of where the brand is positioned currently, I think we're headed to the C. But that's fine. They're by no means the worst. We're going to talk about Celine here. Celine doing an atrocious job on social media for a brand that I really respect and enjoy. So first on TikTok, 2 videos, maybe they deleted the older ones, etc. But they're basically 2 black and white videos that make no sense in context, don't have any reason to exist. We'll get to TikTok strategy in a minute. And then we have what's happening on Instagram, where they're just living in 2017. They're posting single photos. I actually don't even mind this branded area around the photo. I actually think they could do really well with like that as a format of like a video, or the way that plays into like doing a carousel in an intelligent way. Like that could potentially work. But all of these images here like are not particularly exciting. They're all presented in single image format as opposed to in reels or anything else. We got 4 reels here. And obviously the one reel that they did do, which I don't know if this is actually with the ratio, that might be real. But obviously like the reel that they did do smashed in black and white, not setting themselves up for huge success. But you also know that look at the views they do get when they get that versus they're getting less likes than like most influencers like on these photos. They're presenting all the right subject matter. This is a super interesting interior. Why isn't there a carousel of all of these? It would perform way better on social. Same thing with like, okay, we can't take these experiences and make them a video with some sort of guide or tour or a quote. And then even with the products. The difference between where Burberry and Celine are at currently is Celine has products that resonate and are interesting and are potentially viral, right? The Celine weights have been going viral recently. They are in the tennis conversation. They have these really interesting looks that like are controversial enough to at least be conversation starting. And then plenty of like classic items, but they're not being presented in a way that makes sense on social media whatsoever. And they may not care with where they're at as a brand, but I think at this point in time, it's worth noting how powerful this conduit can be for a brand if chosen to be approached right. So quick notes on, if we were creative directing this, what would we be doing better? It's like, I would share these same experiences. We would literally just be sharing them on vertical video. And same thing with these products. Like, can we showcase these products with some like interesting influencers actually using them in like a creative way versus just popping them down on white, and be doing like a lot more of that, but keep these same environments, keep the same products, take even these same environments and these same photos and pop them into carousels, and literally just format all the same things you're doing in a way that is designed to work better on social media. And then for TikTok, I get it. Some brands don't want to be on TikTok. I think that is a bad decision. It is what it is. But say you didn't want to make any new content or think about formats or do things like Gucci, who we're about to break down in a second, what you should do here is use your archives. All of these luxury brands have a heritage, they have history, they have old logos, they have old designs, they have previous collection archives, they have interesting facilities, they have interesting people. On TikTok, especially if you're saying, hey, this is not the audience for us, it's too young, it's too whatever, go educate them as to why. Show them the Celine archive, show them the Celine history, pull out a couple interesting people from the brand and have them act as representatives, similar to what we saw in the luxury experiences segment of this video, and actually tell that story for them. And not doing that is honestly just a massive waste of money, not just in the short term from attention, but from the long term in terms of educating a new generation on the history of your luxury house. Now they do have a new director of art, I believe, Michael Ryder, who is coming, so maybe this will all hop over into his world and purview, but I certainly hope that there's a change, because right now I give this an F. Celine, I love you if you want me to host like a tennis or workout series for you guys so we can pump some social media content out and just bang the line. Now let's go into one of the best in class with Gucci. So what I like when looking at Gucci overall is the balance of what they do on their different platforms. One thing I'll notice, they do a lot of vignettes of celebs, etc., but they pick the right ones and they put them in the right outfits. There's that combination of, if you are going to use celebrity, making sure they're set up for success as you go about doing this. They are on a relentless stream of reels all the time. They're specifically aesthetic for Instagram. They're built as basically Gucci Instagram ads, for lack of a better term. And they're presenting all of these excellently in a format that's meant for Instagram. And why I say that format that's meant for Instagram, and they're doing all kinds of content, is we're going to talk about how they separate out their TikTok and how different that is here in a second. And so they are basically just using every single thing that they do as an Instagram campaign, right? They're presenting their storyline, they're doing all the typical things that you'd expect, and they're doing tons of reels. They are just focused on pumping out content. There's just a lot of Gucci content happening at once. I think doing an excellent job of it. But I really want to focus in on their TikTok, because they're not just cross-posting those same things there. In fact, there's very little content overlap between the two, which shows me inherently they understand about the strategy of what's going on here. We're not merely cross-posting back and forth. And when you do see it on there, they are telling stories, right? They are presenting things inside of TikTok formats that they know people like to use and share. They're doing more interesting and viral approaches of stuff that does not make it onto Instagram. And they're leveraging personalities. These may not have a ton of views, but the fact that they have an actual, they have celebrities and influencers interviewing each other and talking around on camera in a more candid section, giving some room to experiment is, I think, is important to be a part of the cultural conversation. And look, again, it may only have 76,000 views, but being able to have some of these characters and presence and show some of that personality in a more candid way, it's okay if it doesn't have that level of views. I think it's interesting that they're attempting those things and doing them and establishing personalities that look right for the brand. And even in their more candid stuff, they're doing it in a wonderful Gucci way that is very tailor-built for TikTok. I also enjoy that they've worked to bring TikTok influencers into the fold as part of the TikTok conversation, which is something I feel every brand should do. Your normal celebrities may resonate on here, but they don't resonate nearly as much as when you actually put TikTok characters to work within the Gucci ecosystem. Case in point, having Nara involved in what they're doing for Fashion Week. And at Gucci's level is a proper level of involvement for brand inclusion there. And I will say, if you are a brand, a fashion-forward brand, looking for inspiration in this and how to work in this, one of the better accounts to look at and how they incorporate influence and how they incorporate culture is Australia's Gia. And so I want to call this one out because, again, they're experimenting a lot. A lot of their stuff is only going to get 10,000 views, etc. But they're throwing those shots at the wall and then seeing the potential of them hitting. And so this one hit on Instagram and on TikTok, but they're pulling into the zeitgeist. They're using a phrase along with things that are collected from their lookbook in a way that kind of resonates with culture. And you look at the backup of this campaign, they shot, there's easily 15 videos in here from that campaign. That's all shots on goal. That's how to treat, you're looking at a campaign. How do we get footage to complement these ideas? And that other one worked, but this one didn't. And that's totally fine to be able to put those out there. Parents need to realize that. But then also, she's a famous TikTok influencer. She's playing in a campaign in a completely different character than she is inside her influencing. And they're picking those right people. Her and I believe her boyfriend that are doing this, where he cooks for her inside this. And then putting that same concept in a different environment, tied into as a tangent to their existing campaign, is really, really smart world building. But it's about finding these people, right? Okay, he's got 1 million. He's feeding her food in the campaign. That is a great person to have in the middle of your model and conversation, because he obviously is inundated with superfans, and then is able to understand a role of being a fashionable item. And brands like Gia, at a smaller label, Gia and Gia, I pronounce it, are playing in a slightly different field, right? Because they can access people that are kind of bubbling versus the full extent of someone like Nara, who's much bigger. But those are the people to look to in terms of how you can actually leverage brand celebrity and conversation and bring people out of their element into your campaign and utilize the way TikTok works to bring a visual world to life that includes what's happening in TikTok and TikTok culture itself. So overall, I will give Gucci, say, an AA- for how they are coming across on social, and we'll dive into a few more brands here. And for this last section, I'm going to talk about basically a grab bag of all kinds of brands I find interesting. And we're going to start with the furniture category. Cartel's designer furniture. Why I want to focus on them is they have obviously known and beautiful form factors and things that I think could potentially resonate. All these things you see here are Cartel products. These are super standout, well-known designer items. Obviously this lamp is super iconic. You've seen the different Cartel stools. You've seen things like this bookworm, obviously this. And you'll notice when they just do the basic, literally just do the least of showing this iconic form factor, standard text, the video isn't even good and it gets views. But they've basically given up on that, right? You see stuff now, it's basically reposted Instagrams from a few months ago. They're kind of like international and odd at best. And you go over into Instagram and you're seeing kind of these vignettes, similar to what we saw in the hotel world of a nice setup, has the brand on it. I think they have a brand and logo. It's one of the few you can actually get away with like having your logo on there in a nice way. But again, it's just beautiful areas and vignettes. That is the kind of story of their brand is telling on there, and then basically show the product like a handful of times within there. This is the kind of thing where if they were doing this like a little more savvily, and the Instagram is significantly better than the TikTok, like they could be going off on this every single day by showing those products like in context. And it doesn't have to be this huge fancy context where a lot of brands like don't quite understand. But the following to views ratio on this is like okay. But that same thing could be going on TikTok and just absolutely destroying it, but they're not even merged. Like they're not even sharing the same things, nonetheless attempting to show these unique items in different ways and perspectives. And what I like to think about this is like how easy this is to do. Like this is a company that's been around for 75 years, hundreds of thousands of followers, stores, the whole nine. And I want to bring over Brandon from Blanked. He's got 70,000 followers on this, so he himself has like 200K. But he is making like relatively straightforward explainer videos. Obviously take a ton of time and intention to make and kind of thought out, but he is one guy working with a 3D editor who is making this really nice content, getting just as many views as you're seeing on side a lot of the cartel stuff, 400K, 164, 191, showcasing these items that are like attempting to be in that same range as cartel is, making beautiful stuff. And this is something that one person with some effort, while in addition to running a brand, can execute. And then this guy, I know, has been working with him on a bunch of the 3D stuff. Again, he has a person that he's paying to work with to go build these worlds with Brandon. He has the brand account he's promoting these on. But like that is the barrier. This is what I like to kind of highlight, is that if you have items that look amazing, similar to the way the cartels are. If you are building a brand and you want to build luxury yourself inside that furniture space, you can get more attention on social media than these brands who are going to spend more money on it and more time on it and get less views on it. All you need is designs that are even just moderately as good, and you need to post them on social media frequently, and it is just a massive leg up. And so I will give cartel, let's say, a B here on Instagram and then a E on TikTok. Speaking of brands that are kind of lost in their identity, I want to talk about Off-White. Now, Off-White just sold. It's obviously been in a hard place. If you've seen any of the stuff recently, like I think what they've done from a fragrance perspective is interesting. I think their store interiors are super interesting. I even think some of the content they've done has been decent, but the clothes have just not been. We're not in the right space. I don't know how we got here with those. The collections have not been received well. And they're getting like okay views on Instagram, and they still manage to get some attention, but it hasn't quite hit. And then same thing with, on TikTok, it's like almost a complete give up, right? Like none of this stuff matches. It's purely a cross post. And this is an interesting one to talk about because of the ethos of the brand and its founder, where I feel like they have this opportunity to lean into the other side of like spotlighting up and coming artists and designers, being wide open and completely open the way Virgil was, and how things we were building and like what they use and the tech packs and the designs and the ability to show this other side of designer and luxury and fashion life in a way that no one else can, that I would be super heavily leaning into if I was that brand. And I want to talk about Balenciaga. Arguably the best in execution on TikTok and social media, although a complicated brand, but its products lend itself super naturally to being experimental and making experimental content. Just like how Burberry did, they have more avant-garde versions of these experimental reels and TikToks. They are tying into that idea of art as luxury, but going farther deeper into it as like a more avant-garde expression. But this is like amazing content, right? You want to watch this and finish this until the end to see exactly what happens. The production value is hard and complicated. It is super well done, very interesting work across the board that gets attention and then builds the brand lore in the way that they want it to, and while still showcasing the product. And the difference between this and what we saw in Burberry is because people actually buy, God knows who at this point, but like people actually do buy and support Balenciaga as the brand and then see these items and want these items. And the virality has something to do with it. But there is a constant flow and direct flow of these items being featured on their social to people going and engaging with Balenciaga. And then they do a great job, like we saw with Gucci, of not putting the same content across both networks. There is some featured, but they do a lot more on Instagram, post a lot more there, and have a lot more conversational. And I think they could actually do more on both networks, but not like they need to. I think they're gaining the attention that they want through the strategy they have. But I don't really want to talk about either of those. I want to talk about their YouTube, because they are one of the brands who's using YouTube extremely well, which is rare for a lot of these brands, right? And YouTube extremely well for a brand isn't getting hundreds of thousands of views each video. It's taking interesting shots and telling interesting stories. And so for instance here, like the ability to like take a look at these Met Gala, they make a gorgeous video complete with like sound design of how they built together this look that was very particular, that came out as the look came out. You know, features celebrity in there and is short and rewatchable in an interesting way. And they continue to do these little breakdowns of like individual people and vignettes of how one thing is made, a look at the background of a particular gown, using their brand ambassadors to actually like go do something interesting, like actually talk through the closet and like look at their bags or do whatever. Like everything has a concept. They're trying things out. It doesn't have to be going for virality, but it's also not telling some boring story. And you'll actually see if you go through these, they just have campaign after campaign and thought after thought that's going into this, like from a long form perspective in a way that's interesting, that utilizes personality, that utilizes the storytelling of craft that becomes genuinely interesting. And so I want to commend them on their use on YouTube as well. So I have a ton more brands I'd love to go through from a luxury standpoint. I have like a massive list here. I don't want this video to be 2 hours. If you like this, please comment other brands you'd like me to talk about and I will drop into it. But I do have like Ferrari, Rolex, Tiffany's, Hermes, Jacquemus, Cartier, and a few others that I'm prepped for like a follow-up video. So, and other categories too, the way we talked about experiences or hotels. Would love to know which ones you're interested in and what categories you're interested in for social breakdowns. But I hope you found this as interesting to watch as I did, like exploring it and thinking about it critically. So there'll be more of these coming soon. Again, I do shorter versions and breakdowns of this on TikTok and Instagram, so you can follow me on the same handle there. But we will be back soon with another one of these based on these other ideas if this one does well. So thank you so much for watching. Like, subscribe, all the usual. Thank you.